Hey guys, when navigating a complex recovery journey, as most of us know, having the right support makes all the difference. But with so many programs, approaches, and coaches out there, how do you actually know what's helpful and what might just be another expensive detour? If you've been here with me for a while, welcome back. If you're new here, I'm Raelan Agle, and this is where we explore real recovery stories from ME/CFS, long COVID, and similar conditions. So no fluff, no gatekeeping, just what actually works. My guest today, Michele Flores, joining us from right here in California, knows firsthand how overwhelming the recovery world can be. After 20 years of debilitating migraines, she then developed chronic fatigue syndrome, only to face another major setback after a COVID vaccine injury left her housebound. But just determined to recover, she invested in about 10 different programs and also worked with a handful of coaches as well. And thankfully, started seeing a lot of progress. But she knew the system was broken, or at the very least, could be a lot better, because you shouldn't have to take 10 programs or have the money to take that many programs in order to recover. So Michele didn't just focus on her own recovery, she also created something much bigger. She founded a Facebook group that fast tracks recoveries and saves members from costly trial and error, and offers a like-minded community where everyone is supportive and believes in recovery. So while there are many groups out there, only a very small handful actually focus on solutions. And the results from this group are pretty amazing. So I can't wait for you to hear more about Michele's journey and about this group. So let's dive in. Michele, it's so wonderful to have you here. Thank you for doing this.
Hi, thank you so much, Raelan, for having me on your channel. It's so nice to meet you.
We were saying before we hit record that there's been so many different things on your journey. You have gone through so much, saying that virtually everyone watching and listening is probably going to relate to a piece of your story, because unfortunately for you, you've been through virtually it all. But fortunately for people watching and listening, you have experience with virtually all
Yes.
of it. So I know it's a big ask to sum up your health journey that brought you to where you are, but kind of take us back to how did this start for you?
Yeah, so mine started over 20 years ago, and it mostly is around chronic pain, chronic migraine to be specific, severe food sensitivities, and then later I got CFS. So in about 2020, I started my CFS journey. So my migraine started the typical, story of being a type A personality, being a mom, working, trying to do it all and just getting yourself into trouble. And I went down, the Western medical route and listened to all my doctors and just ended up with chronic daily migraines where medicines just weren't helping me anymore. And I remember going to one of my primary doctors and them telling me that there really was no cure, that maybe when I hit menopause, that they would start slowly going down. And I just thought, wow, I'm 30 years old. That's 20 years of a lot of pain to deal with. Eventually, the medicines didn't work anymore. I had went to all the neurologists. I even got Botox injections, and the medicines just stopped working on me. So I spent a lot of, dark days in my room in the dark in debilitating pain. A lot of times I couldn't even move my head. I didn't brush my teeth for 3 days. I didn't, even take a shower. So I definitely know the depths of chronic illness for sure. I lived a lot of it. I, went through a lot of medical trauma. There was, doctors giving me tramadol before it was classified as a controlled substance. And I would go to these, pharmacists and even my doctor and say, are you sure that, I'm not going to get dependent on this? It kind of feels like I am. And they would actually tell me no. Later, tramadol was actually classified as a Schedule 4 drug, I think. So it was really devastating. So that was another hurdle, that I had to get over, is getting off of that medicine. At one point, I even flew to Ohio to get migraine surgery, where a doctor actually severed the nerve endings in my forehead and in the top of my head, and I believe in my temples. And if you know about the nervous system now, like that almost seems like criminal that someone was allowed to do that, right? So
Wow.
yeah, my migraine journey eventually led me to go down the naturopathic and holistic route. And so I enlisted a migraine coach when I was at the depths of despair. I remember checking myself into a hotel one week and just being wanting to be away from my family because I couldn't, be a good mom or a good wife or a good. I couldn't even work, right? So this migraine coach kind of, gave me a rope of hope and eventually led me to doing Gerson therapy. I'm not sure if many of your viewers have heard about it, but it's an organic, whole food, plant based diet. And it does a lot of detox. It really is for the cancer section, but it was originally started with migraines. So I went down that route and actually got better for a short time, was able to go back to work, and then just got migraines again. So, I tried the Western medical route. I tried all the doctors, all the supplements, all the medicines, all the diets, and it just, wasn't getting me any long term results. So eventually, in 2020, the pandemic happened. I was able to work from home. I had moved into a house that later I found out was full of mold. But at that time, with the pandemic, being able to work from home, I had a lot of stress reduction. And at the same time, that health coach, kind of as a last straw, introduced me to DNRS. And just doing that for a few months, not religiously like they require, it actually helped my migraines. So I was at that point down to, eating like five foods, not being able to even like buy water. I had to look at the ingredients and make sure there was no like minerals in there. And so my life was extremely limited, but DNRS ended up opening it up. And within about 2 years, I was able to eat all the foods again. I wasn't having many migraines. But around the same time, that's when fatigue set in.
Before we move on,
Yeah.
just for people who aren't familiar, can you explain just a high level what is DNRS?
DNRS is a brain retraining system that was created by Annie Hopper, years ago that helps with, all types of chronic illness, chronic fatigue, chronic migraine, fibromyalgia, MCS, MCAS, all of those types. Yeah. So it can actually give you really fast results. It's more of a single modality program, and I'll talk more about that later. I found more luck with multiple modality programs. Yeah, so my fatigue journey started around 2020, and I went to the doctors, and they thought it was anemia or that I had, low ferritin, low iron. And so we treated it for about 2 years that way. It was really mild. I could still do yoga, I could still do Pilates, but nothing any strenuous, right? It would put me on the couch for days. I had all of the typical symptoms, feeling depleted, fatigue, shortness of breath. My restless leg syndrome was horrible, insomnia. But I was able to figure out if I stayed within these guidelines that I could, manage a mild CFS. And then I even remember, in April of 2023, I was able to go to Washington, D.C. on a trip with my family, and we walked around all of the famous sites, no problem. And then in July of that year, I was turning 50. My husband got COVID for the first time. I was scared because he was pretty sick, and I went and got the fourth COVID vaccine. And within about 3 weeks, I wasn't able to do yoga or Pilates anymore. And I eventually became housebound from it. So, yeah, the vaccine really did a number on me.
So we've had chronic pain, we've had chronic fatigue, mold exposure, now a vaccine injury, and just it sounds like potentially in well, you had some really rough times in the past too, but in one of the worst places you'd been on this journey by this point.
Yeah. And what's funny is that when I was housebound, I was sitting in my bed on my computer thinking, wow, if I have chronic fatigue, this isn't that bad because my brain is working. Like I don't have a migraine and I can actually turn my head. And it's a little twisted and it shows you the depth of, the pain and chronic illness that you're in if you're actually thinking that CFS is better than chronic migraine, right? Because at least
This is great. Yeah, this is amazing.
But with chronic migraine, when I felt good, I was limitless almost, right? I mean, I'd be put back in bed, but with
Yeah.
chronic fatigue, you're definitely limited a lot more, at a steadier amount of time. So, yeah, it was unfortunate.
So what did life look like for you after that vaccine, your quality of
Yeah,
life?
so I eventually just became housebound. I couldn't do much. I was able to travel one time and I went on the planes, but I had to go through the airports in wheelchairs. I remember, doing too many steps one day and laying down in the hotel, and I had a heart rate monitor on, and just sleeping in the middle of the night, my heart rate monitor goes off and I have tachycardia. So I dealt with, all the gamut of the symptoms of CFS, shortness of breath and fatigue and all of that. And shortly after that is when I found your channel and I started watching all of the programs, um, videos and recovery stories. I was really hesitant to put any of my money into any of these programs because I really thought I could figure it out by myself. Like I didn't need a program to heal chronic migraine, although, 20 years, I guess that's not good success rate, right? But I, because my house was filled with mold and my husband was going to remediate it, I ended up moving in with my son so I could help take care of my brand new granddaughter. And I eventually, but at that time, I actually couldn't, even hold her. So I found ways to take care of her without even picking her up. And it was, a pretty sad time for me. But, watching all of the different recovery programs, I eventually was just too worried, skeptical about buying any of the programs. And I ended up doing a 21-day water fast. I had heard somebody that, had long COVID and they had fully recovered. So I tried it. And it was during the Christmas of 2023, I believe. And I took even, pictures with my granddaughter that I shared with you, and I couldn't even hold her. I was sitting down on the floor. But yeah, what happened was after that 21-day fast, I was actually able to get out of housebound. Like during the fast, all of my symptoms, exacerbated. I had insomnia, I had all these detox things going on, but I really knew that this was like the cure. I was really going to be healed after that. So I had full on belief. I wasn't scared of the symptoms. And when I came out of being housebound, a lot of my symptoms, or almost all of them, had actually just went away. It seemed like, a miracle, right? But going forward, I didn't have any other tools to continue my healing journey. And we know that there's a lot more to healing, right? So I eventually, bought a meditation program from your channel. I eventually bought ANS Rewire. And, fast forward now, 2 years, I've bought, over almost 10 programs and, met with different coaches, about 10 of them. Some of them I stuck with longer than others. But yeah, one of the first goals that I wanted after becoming out of housebound is being able to hold my granddaughter. And so that was so special because I was able to do that. And then I was able to go to Disneyland in 2023 December for her second birthday. I had to go around in a wheelchair, but I was still able to hold her and enjoy all of the sights and sounds of that magical place. And then a few months later, just last year, about this time, I was feeling almost fully recovered. And I was doing, a lot more. I was able to go on a 16-day European trip. We went to Paris and Madrid and Mallorca to see my son get married. We went to, 3 places in Italy, and we went to Barcelona, and it was fabulous. And I just thought, wow, this is the life. On the way home, my husband ended up contracting COVID for the second time, and I got it for the first time. So that was really something that shook my nervous system. And I struggled with it a little bit. I was able to come out of it and be okay. But at the same time, what was going on with my mom is that she had gotten a second diagnosis of cancer, and this time it was terminal. So last July through December, I was really dealing with my mom basically dying of cancer and, trying to recover fully from, getting COVID for the first time. But I enlisted some really good coaching and another program to help me through more of the traumatic part of it. Because in 2011, my dad had passed away, and I didn't know how to deal with grief. I didn't know how to deal with sadness. So I just pushed all those emotions down. And I remember not even being able to talk to him for about, talk about him for about 3 years. So I knew going into this with my mom that I would really need to prepare myself and get the resources that I need. So unfortunately, she passed away in January. Luckily, both of those things didn't put me back to housebound. It didn't, push me further into illness. It did stagnate it a little bit. But now I'm moving forward and I'm not crossed the finish line yet, but I'm very optimistic and I can see the finish line and I'm just almost there. So yeah, that's my story all summed up.
Wow, very well done, summing up so much so well. And I'm so sorry, Michelle, to hear about all that you've been through, including the loss of your parents and just so much challenge and struggle and suffering over the years. It's one of the and also the frustration, I imagine, of trying all these different programs and coaches and spending all this money. But it's one of the amazing things that, I was excited to share with people is that you have insight into, what it's like to try all these different programs. And most people don't have the resources to try 10 programs. And that can feel stressful because then they think, well, now I'm not going to
No.
recover. What do I do? So what were the most helpful things? Were there specific programs that stood out, or was it specific things that you learned, or was it nothing at all? What was your takeaway from doing all of that work with these different programs and coaches?
Yeah, one of the big things I think is single modality programs. If one modality, and a modality I mean by like brain retraining, if that doesn't work for you, it's good if a program has multiple things to offer you because it may just not resonate with you or it may not just be good for you at that time. So I think everybody's journey is unique and we need to find what works for us. And that's why one of the reasons why I created a group so we can kind of help guide people towards that. So they're not making decisions kind of in the dark, they're making them more informed. But I think most programs are, really good programs. It's just finding the right one for you at the right time. But definitely feel like multiple modality programs are much more helpful. What didn't work for me was the heart rate monitors. I joined this Facebook group for long COVID, and they, really had coached people around heart rate monitors, and it just fueled a lot of fear. So heart rate monitors didn't work for me. Also, what didn't work for me, obviously, is doctors, naturopaths, holistic doctors, any supplements, medications, or IV therapies. Temporary results, but nothing long term. What really got me stuck was really believing in the mitochondria damage ATP theory issue. That really kept me stuck, as well as traditional pacing theories. Um, Aggressively resting as well. I know that there is a time for resting at the very beginning of the stages, but as you progress further along in your recovery, resting almost hurts you versus, helps you. And then, like I mentioned, single modality programs is what didn't help. What did work was just believing in the mind body work, that the root cause of, CFS and most of these chronic illnesses is just being stuck, your body and your brain being stuck in this survival state in distress. It was probably, not living your life somehow in alignment, right? It was out of balance somehow. It was inauthentic somehow. So your brain and your body are kind of fighting against you. Learning about the polyvagal theory. So a lot of the programs that I took didn't have polyvagal theory in it. Jan Rothney's Reset to Thrive program did touch on it, but I had to just educate myself about it even more and just learn that, okay, all these tools that I've learned from all these programs, if you can apply them with a polyvagal theory, you get a lot more success. Stacking tools is something that I learned from one of the other admins in our group, Andrea. It's a really good, thing to do is just to stack these different, brain retraining and somatics, and as well as learning how to state shift. Stacking tools and state shifting Understanding that on the polyvagal theory, a lot of programs teach, just calming techniques, where if you learn that you can, in certain states, that you can down regulate or up regulate by using certain tools, it really can accelerate your recovery. A lot of the programs also didn't have expansion therapy. So I had to self learn or, enlist other coaches like a movement coach to help me with that. So expanding your world, facing your fears, integrating back into life, even while you have symptoms, not just waiting until you actually recover. Cold therapy was a really great tool that helped me with symptoms and state shifting. And then later on, doing the really deep emotional work and personality pattern work is what helped.
Wow, that is an excellent summary. And you touched on a lot of things that I hear a lot of people mention that I interview here. One of them that you mentioned a couple of times is the polyvagal theory and that approach. So, can you explain a bit about what that is?
Well, it was created by Stephen Porges, and it just talks about how our survival systems have three different branches. And one is the sympathetic state, the other is dorsal vagal shutdown, and then the other is ventral vagal. And there are some mixed states, but just to keep it simple, we'll keep it with three. And most of the time, healthy people live in a ventral vagal state, and um, CFS is more of the dorsal shutdown. And we get there by living our lives in the sympathetic state for probably too long. Yeah.
Okay. So, coming back down to a lot of what we're talking about nervous system regulation and fight or flight and the different states that we're in.
Yes. Yeah.
Tell us about the community, the group that you've created that helps people to navigate all of this.
Yeah, so about 20 months ago, I really created this Facebook group to help myself. I had been spending so much money on programs and support groups and program advice that and I actually had gotten, burned on a few of them. So I really wanted something that wasn't behind a paywall, where it was really just recovery focused. It would be able to share recovery tips and give advice on what programs are good and what programs, aren't. And then in addition to that, advice on what might be missing. So if someone is taking a program and they have just brain retraining in there, somebody else might suggest that, they try somatics, or if some programs have both of those, maybe they're missing emotional work or parts work or personality pattern, core wounds. So there's just a variety of different pieces that might be missing from some puzzles. Although, some people just need one thing and they can go on, but I think the majority of us have a lot more complex issues, and so need a few things in our toolbox. So we started this Facebook group, and we just started by doing weekly Zoom calls. We would discuss recovery tips, and then eventually we interviewed people that were recovering or had recovered. And then we started bringing in program owners, people like Rebecca Tolan, Jen and Carden from Samaya Heal, Christina Choi, where our group members were actually able to ask questions live on the call and get, recovery tips and their questions answered. So it was really great. Then we actually set up co-regulating practice sessions all day long. We could co-regulate together. And what that means is we can get on Zoom calls and do brain retraining rounds together. We could do somatics together, EFT tapping, meditation, because a lot of these programs don't have that ongoing group support. So that was key. And then they give you all these tools, and a lot of people are resistant to actually using them. So if you're getting on a call and practicing with each other, it can really help your recovery. I think it's unique is because it's all mind body focused. We think that that's where people get the most benefit. We don't have any, physical discussions in our group. There's so many groups out there talking about physical, supplements or medications, things like that to help. But our group mainly focuses on mind body. Because I have a DNRS background, we don't really have any symptom discussions in there, so we avoid triggering other members. And it's solely recovery focused. So anyone that doesn't believe in recovery, probably not a good fit for our group. It really keeps us like in a safe bubble. We have produced a long list of recovery workshops and cheat sheets in our group. So a lot of free resources. We've done workshops on Stephen Porges's polyvagal theory and how that applies to CFS, how you can identify the state that you're in, and then how to shift out of states, how to shift out of symptoms. We even created a polyvagal cheat sheet. I'm a big proponent of cheat sheets because you read all these books, and if you can summarize it in a page or two, it's so helpful. So in that polyvagal cheat sheet, it shows you, what state you might be in and what tools you might be able to use. You can be in a sympathetic state and you can either upregulate or downregulate in order to get into ventral vagal. There's other like healing routines and tips. We created a dip document, which was always such a mystery to me. How to get out of a dip, what can you do? So these lessons and group support have been instrumental for so many people that have gotten better just being in our group. It's really, I think, accelerating recoveries and saving thousands of dollars for people on programs that they may not necessarily be a good fit for. So it's not necessarily that, they're not buying programs, they're just maybe having a more informed choice. They could be, avoid buying any some programs that might have bad reviews, and there's like maybe one or two of them out of the 30 or 50 that are out there. So most of them are good. They might avoid single modality programs. The members in our group have a vast array of experience on different programs, so they can guide group members to different programs. They may not guide them toward a single modality program, they might guide them to more of them, or they don't know what their missing piece is. And so people can encourage them and suggest different ways. Of course, everybody, makes their own decisions, but it's a more informed choice. And it's been changing lives. We get a lot of great feedback that this group has really accelerated their recovery and made such a big impact. A few of our group members came into our group pretty severe, and they had taken at least one program but weren't moving the needle in their recovery and their healing journey. And they were able to, with the resources that we provide, the group support and the practice sessions, within a year, they're out traveling or working or hiking. Another group member came in, she was moderate and was just looking for ongoing support. She had taken already a few programs and was working through a program at the same time. And within about a year, she is now fully recovered and actually off being a coach on her own. So it's really affecting people's recoveries for sure.
This is incredible. And I'm assuming, Michelle, this is free to
Yeah,
join?
it's all free. Yes.
Wow. Oh, this is makes me so happy because as we know, there are so many online spaces for people facing these conditions. And well, I know because people that I interview tell me over and over and over how many of them are not helpful, or they are very pessimistic, or they're not allowed to talk about recovery, or it's a lot of gaslighting or, symptom competitions almost. So just to hear about your space and just how supportive and optimistic and recovery focused it is. And not just that, but really delivering concrete information about recovery strategies and about the programs and also hands-on support from the group while you're going through it. I think that's brilliant. Yeah, the impact you're having, I'm sure, is immeasurable. So this, of course, will be linked in the description for people watching, listening. If you want to check it out, which I imagine you do, all the information you need will be there. I'm wondering, with all of this long journey of yours and all of your learning from your own journey and now with all these other people, was there one big aha moment on your journey or something that really stands out that helped you start pulling things together?
Yeah, I think my biggest aha moment was just being empowered, like realizing we have this amazing power within us to heal, to turn off symptoms, to change states, to change our response to what's going on around us, to change personality patterns that are automatically happening in the background and have been running our lives for years. And just actually say no more, to be assertive, to put ourselves first after so many years of probably not putting ourselves first. And this is how we got here. And then just knowing what our wants and needs are, and then being okay with meeting those instead of meeting other people's first. So empowerment is a big word for me.
Oh yeah, that is massive. I think it can be scary for some people at first because we're brought up to believe, the doctor will fix us and we just sit back and wait for them to figure things out. But once you realize, no, wait, this isn't in their hands. This is in my hands. And I find that this ripples over to virtually every area of my life. So, are there, have you found this, or can you share examples of how everything that you're learning on this incredibly tough health journey has helped you, in other areas of your life as well?
Yeah, it's helping me. I'm still working through the personality pattern part, but it's helping me just form more authentic relationships, helping me, set real boundaries with people, realizing that I was doing things at the detriment of my happiness and I didn't even really know. And then just going through the journey with my mom's death and family dynamics and inheritance, I really was able to find more details of my childhood trauma and see how that shaped my life. And then stepping into my power to be able to change those with help, of course, from therapist type coaches, I call them. But yeah, I just think that, through this journey, that I really feel like we can change the future of this illness by spreading the right information. We can, let people know that you don't need to rest your way to heal, that we can regulate, you can do more restful and enjoyable activities. You can do things that are more exciting than just aggressively resting, and you can change personality patterns that you've had for many years. You can, one of the things that I like to talk about is Dr. John Eaton's from Reverse Therapy. He has a banana theory, and just letting go of those bananas that are probably crippling your life, but you're still holding on to, leaving jobs that are stressful that just aren't a good fit for you. So I used to be a CPA tax accountant and realized through this journey that it didn't make me happy and that it was always stressful and their deadlines were kind of a lose-lose situation. So I finally just walked away from it and I'm going to find my next, career in the future. But yeah, putting my health first.
Yeah, I say to myself in my life all the time, life is just CFS recovery on repeat, because I'm just using those same insights, those same strategies, the same tools to help me navigate everything. It applies to so many different things, because so much of it is, we talk about it being an internal transformation, not so much in that you're changing who you are on the inside, but like you said, learning to be more in alignment, to live in alignment with who you are on the inside. And that's the transformation, is knowing, accepting, seeing who you are as you are, and then being that person in the world. And those are, I think, that along with all the other great tools that we learn are what help us navigate things, as we go forward. I'm going to link at the end here a video. I'm thinking, because I appreciate you bringing up your experience with the vaccine, because I know vaccines save lives and the data is clear. They are very important, but that doesn't mean that there aren't people out there having adverse reactions to them, and they need to be heard and they need support. And I know that they have been unfortunately silenced a lot. So another great interview with a woman named Monica Marwick, who had a vaccine injury. I'll link that for if people want to learn more about or hear more about that sort of experience. But yeah, I thank you so much for being here, Michelle. This has been incredible. Your journey is full of so much learning and so many insights, and it's so incredible that you're now out spreading this and helping other people to navigate theirs. So thank you so much for everything that you're doing, and thank you for your time here today.
Yes, and thank you so much for being so brave about the vaccine injury issue, and thank you for everything that you do as well. You're impacting the, community immensely. So thank you for your time.
Oh, it's absolutely my pleasure and my honor to do it. I absolutely love it. Thank you to those of you watching. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts, and hope to see you in this next video with Monica.
Bye.